Hello and welcome back to the workbench for another unboxing. Today I'm taking a look at this. This is the Revell P-47M Thunderbolt in 1/72 scale. So join me, Matt, for Model Minutes as I get stuck inside this box and see what this is like. So starting off on the front cover then, we've got a pretty exciting image of the P-47 and it appears to be in combat with an ME-262. You can see that it's got quite a few options of armament on there, so hopefully those are included in the kit. Moving on to the left hand side, we are at 1/72 scale. We have some dimensions where potentially the length is 15.6 centimeters and 17.2 centimeters in width. Down here, bottom left, we have an item code of 03984. We are in a blue boxing, so this tells me that this is potentially a slightly older kit in the Revell range. If we flip over to the back then, we've got some images of other kits which are available within the range and a bit of an explanation to the skill level system. But if you've been watching my videos for a while, you'll know that I think that the skill level system that Revell uses here doesn't mean a great deal. It basically goes off of part count and isn't a real reflection on how difficult the kit is to build. For instance, it does say that this is a skill level 3 on the thin edge here, but in this instance, a skill level 3 just essentially means that it has more parts, more than 30 parts, but up to 100. So, you know, you could have a kit with 50 parts, which is trickier to build than something with 25. Or vice versa. You could have something with less parts, which is more complicated to do. On this thin edge here, we've got some information about the P-47 in different languages and a breakdown of some of the features of this kit. Supposedly, we have detailed surfaces, cockpit with instrument panel, a rotary engine, a freely rotating propeller, undercarriage rockets, 2 external fuel tanks, and there are 2 paint schemes included, it says here, decals for 2 USAAF versions. And we do have some paint color callouts here for Revell colors, which is an aluminium and a blue. And other than that, everything else appears to be the same. On this thin edge here, we just have some information that this is an unassembled kit, but you'll notice we do actually have a copyright date of 2013. As always, take a copyright date with a pinch of salt because that's not necessarily a tooling date. So it would be nice to see a tooling date on here, but I guess we'll have to work with the copyright date for now. So let's get inside the box and see what we have. As usual, I'm going to start with the instructions, and they are to the older format from Revell, so they're in black and white, but we have information about the actual aircraft here, and again a copyright date at the top of 2013. If we turn over the page, we have some health and safety information and a key to the different symbols, which I'll just move on from, and then we're met with Revell's slightly frustrating paint color callout system. So in here, although every Revell paint color already has a paint number, they then reassign the paint number to a paint letter. And you'll see the reason primarily is because they'll do ratio mixes, but other brands have no problem with just putting the ratio on the page at the relevant time. So this is frustrating because I find I have to keep going backwards and forwards to figure out what I'm supposed to be painting the kit in. But small rant aside, let's move on to the actual step-by-steps. Starting at the top, you can see we've got a sprue map, which is really handy because it helps you find where the parts are if you happen to miss one or misplace one. Coming on down then, we're into our assembly instructions, and they look to be to the normal standard from Revell. We've got some cockpit details which need to be inserted inside of one of the fuselage halves, and then we turn over the page and we join our fuselage halves together. There are a few extra bits and pieces. It looks like we have a raised landing gear option, which is indicated here by this part which goes in the rear landing gear or the tail gear bay. We then have our wing surfaces which need to be joined together. There are holes here by the looks of it which we can drill out in order to install rockets, I would presume. It looks like there's 5 on each side. And then we come on down, we have painting instructions for internal landing gear bays as well. We're met with our engine assembly, and if we assemble this correctly, our central pin here should be freely rotating, which will be quite nice. And that's not too bad actually, because you install that and then you can add your propeller later on. So that's not a very not a bad way of doing it, because that means you can paint things separately. Add our wings, add our tail surfaces, add our engine cowling if we want at this point. Come on down, we've got our landing gear here. Landing gear can be installed in the lowered position like this, or in the raised position like this. So that's a nice little inclusion in the kit. However, I haven't seen a pilot figure yet, so that potentially means that you would have to install your own pilot figure if you wanted this to be flying. Also, no display stand either. We do have some extra bits and pieces which need to be added on here. I think this is for this particular version. It sort of like adds a fillet to the back of the tail. I think there are other versions of the P-47 which don't use this, so potentially this kit could be used for other variants, I presume. Then we come on down to our canopy, and the canopy can be positioned open and closed, and it does have the option to have it openable and closable once you've installed it. So this installs in here and then it slides backwards and forwards, if that's something that you would be interested in. It would make it easier for painting, because I'm sure you could just close it and then you could just slide it back when you've finished painting it if you wanted to. Moving on down, we've got what looks to be a landing light in the wing, pitot tube, bomb mount, propeller goes on, we have our drop tanks here which get assembled, and then everything can be added in. So we do have the option for drop tanks on the wings and more rockets as well. So it might just, I might install all of them, I don't know. And that brings us to the painting instructions. So frustratingly, the painting instructions are in black and white, which is very frustrating because, you know, how many shades of grey? It could be possible to mix B and C up because they look very similar, although they have annotated it on here. So the first one we've got is a US 8th Army Air Force version from 1945, which is the one on the box here. So it has silver leading edges and blue with a red cowling. So that's not too bad. And then we flip over the page and we have the second paint scheme, which is from the same station by the looks of it, in Boxstead in England, but this has different colours, I presume. Not the blue, so this is D and E. So D and E are grey and dark green, so a grey and green. So you've got two different shades of blue or a grey and green version based on your preference. So yeah, these aren't terrible instructions, but I do have my reservations about certain elements of them, such as not being in colour and the like. I would prefer to see them in colour, but this is a slightly older kit, so it's kind of to be expected. We did also have another safety warning sheet, so I'm just going to skip past that and move on to the decals. So the decals then, printed in Italy, I believe these may be cartograph decals, but they may be a little bit older, because I say cartograph possibly because there is a C at the end of the item code, and I have been informed in the past that potentially if Revell has a C on the end of their decal code, it could be by cartograph. If it was Z, it would be a Zanchetti or Zanchetti. I can't remember, but basically, these decals are okay. I've not had massive problems with them in the past. They do feel a little thicker than normal. Perhaps they are a slightly older edition, but the printing on them is really quite nice. We have one of the paint schemes up here and the second one down here, and then all the common transfers as well. Not a great deal of decals, not a great deal of stencils either, so potentially you don't need to take a long time to do these decals. But yeah, they look to be okay, don't they? I can't see anything there particularly untoward. So good, nice set of decals. That then brings us on to the bag of bits, and you can see that this has not been opened. So let's have a look inside of here. And it's stuck to the table. Right, so first thing you probably noticed is that the clear parts came in the bag with everything else. So I will look at them first. The problem with having the clear parts in the bag with everything else is that, well, it's not broken, I don't think, but that's just sort of maybe snapped there. But it becomes damaged. So over time, as it's in the bag, it rustles around, and there is actually like some scuffs on the top here, which is less than ideal. It does look a little bit scuffed at the top, so that's potentially where it's been rubbing against other parts in the bag. There is some rivet detail around the outside. The framework is not too pronounced, but I'm sure it'd be maskable. There are some weird little scratches and artifacts in places on here, which is a little bit disappointing, but generally the mold quality is acceptable. There is some flash which will need cleaning off, but yeah, they are okay. They are usable. There's another sort of scuff on the inside of that. A little bit tatty, but generally okay. Would have preferred that to be in its own bag to prevent any damage. And then after that, we have 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 4. They're not quite like truly grey. They have a slightly olive tinge to them, which maybe would show up in the camera. But yeah, it's a very slight olivey green tinge to it. So this features recessed decals and rivet decals, as you can probably see. So there's quite a nice level of detail on here. Mold quality is fairly good. Plastic is a little dense, slightly greasy feel to it, but generally okay. There is a slight scuff on the plastic here, potentially where the tooling's not been that well looked after. The pilot's chair has molded on harnesses, and we do have, it's quite a nicely detailed control panel. But the thing you've probably noticed, because I have, is that there's quite a bit of flash. So the flash is all this extra stuff around the outside, which shouldn't be there. So these are going to require a bit of cleaning up to get it looking quite nice. On the inside, we've got some detail inside of the fuselage there in the cockpit. Ejector pins are on this side. Hopefully this is the not visible side. Hopefully these other parts here as well aren't going to be visible, but there is definitely some cleaning up required. This fillet, for example, has lots of flash on it, which will need to be resolved. Yeah, I mean, the detail wise is really quite nice. It's quite nicely reproduced. And let's move on to this sprue. So this is our fuel tanks or drop tanks and rockets, which are pretty nice, molded to a fairly decent quality. Nothing really too, these aren't too bad. There's not as much flash on this one as there was on the other one. We have our engine part here, but there is a bit of flash on that. So yeah, this will need a little bit of work to clean up. Coming on to this sprue then, we have our tail surfaces, which are the same. The details on this are a little more shallow compared to the other sprue, and there are some little mold artifacts on there as well, which is a little bit disappointing. It doesn't look as particularly well looked after. There is a lot of flash on this sprue. You can see there, that's a big bit of flash. Some people say it's just extra value for money. I think this is more flash here as well. I think we shouldn't have it all the way around here. So they've not been particularly careful. I think maybe they've done a lot of production runs of this and now the flash is creeping in. So it will need a lot of cleaning up. Here's our landing gear doors, which if you want to have in the lowered position, you need to cut them. And yeah, I mean, the engine details, the details that are present are quite nice, but it just needs a little bit of cleaning up. And then this brings us onto the wings. So the wings have the same sort of level of detail, some rivets in places. You can see there's a little bit of dirt here and there molded into the plastic, which is a little bit frustrating, but not going to be visible once we've finished the kit, once we've painted it. Lower wing surfaces here, level of detail is quite nice, but there are some little scuffs. Flash around the machine gun ports as well, or the barrels rather, which will need a bit of cleaning up. Flipping over onto the inside, you can see those molded recesses for the holes to drill out your rocket rails if you want to include them, but you do have to include the mounts for the drop tanks by the looks of it, because they are not sort of just representations, they are actually there. And then we have our lower wing surfaces. We've got our gear bays, which actually have some nice detail inside of them, and you can see we've got a copyright date. So there's another copyright date here, which is 1999. So if that's the tooling date, it would seem that the amount of flash on here for its age would sort of make sense. But yeah, we will talk about the tooling age in a little bit. But yeah, that's it pretty much. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 slightly olivey grey plastic parts. which are molded to a nice quality. The plastic doesn't feel overly greasy, but there is some flash and some tidying up that's going to be required. The clear parts appear to be completely usable as well, but again, they are a little tatty and require a little bit of cleanup. Decals, not a big sheet, but they look to be completely usable and, printed to a nice quality. And then our instructions, which are to the normal format from Revell, but should, I hope, be relatively easy to follow. I just wish they were printed in colour. All of which comes contained within quite a nicely illustrated box, but sadly could do with a bit more extra information on there, such as the tooling date. And this actually brings us to the tooling date. So as we saw on the sprues over there, the tooling date for this kit is 1999. So it's not a particularly new tooling, but I think for the level of detail and what we've seen there, it doesn't look too bad. I mean, the amount of flash and scuffs we've seen kind of goes with the fact that this has been used a lot in the tooling or manufacture process. You can see on the screen here, I've put a list of the history of the kits. So I actually built this kit, well, not this kit, but the 2000 boxing in a different paint scheme as my first ever introduction to Revell kits. And, I've been building older Airfix kits up until that point, the old Blenheim, the old Anson, all that sort of thing. And then when you got this from Revell and I looked at this and the level of detail inside of here, it blew my mind. I thought, oh, wow, if all Revell kits are this detailed, then they're going to be amazing. And then it turns out that actually not all of them were. So this was effectively a brand new tooling the first time I ever built this. And it gave a good impression of Revell up until the point I bought the second kit. I can't remember what it was, but it was nowhere near as detailed. And I thought, well, that's a bit misleading because the other kit was like this. So this is what manufacturers need to bear in mind, is that you need to have consistency across the range. But yeah, this kit seems to be available. This seems to be the most recent sort of boxing of it. There have been other paint schemes out there available in the past, but currently this is the one that on the Revell website is still available, even though this was last introduced in 2013 and has undoubtedly just been in consistent production since then. On the Revell website, you can see that currently it's retailing for €9.99, which, £10 effectively, if we do almost a like-for-like conversion into GBP, it's not too bad. It is a slightly older kit and I would prefer to pay less. And actually, I was very fortunate that I did manage to pay less. I actually paid around £5 for mine. So because I paid £5 for it, I decided to get two. So I have two of these. I'm going to potentially just do both of the paint schemes that are included. So we had two paint schemes and I'll just do one in each version. And I thought that'd be quite nice to have two kits built of the same model, but in different paint schemes in the same video. So yeah, let me know if you'd like to see that one. And with that, I think it's probably time to wrap this one up here. It's a slightly older tooling, which suffers from a little bit of lack of care with the mold, and does have a lot of flash and some scuffs on the plastic parts, but the detail looks to be relatively quite nice. I have heard that it potentially has some shape issues, but I'm not an expert on the P-47, so I couldn't tell you what those shape issues were, but I have heard other people say that this isn't particularly accurate shape-wise, but again, I don't know. So if you know, let me know down in the comments. As always, I'd like to give a shout out to my Model Club members for the extra support they give the channel. A massive thanks to these guys on screen, and if you'd like to join them or support the channel in other ways, full information is below the video. The best way to support the channel for free though is by subscribing with notifications turned on so you never miss a modelling upload. Finally though, last thing to say is a massive thank you to you for watching this one, and I'll see you on the workbench again next time.